Have you heard of Able? Able is built by AI engineers in San Francisco, and it takes body cam footage and turns it into police reports, using both visual data and transcripts to gather a full picture of the events. If your agency is still writing reports, then it's time to upgrade and liberate 1/3 of patrol time for more important things, like actual policing. Go to ablepolice.com, that's ABEL police.com to learn more. This episode is sponsored by Hero Schedule. If your department needs better scheduling software that isn't outdated, clunky, and expensive, Hero Schedule is an easy switch. It's $4 per user per month, and they give you a free 30-day trial. Get started at heroschedule.com and click on Try Hero Schedule. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Ladies and gents, welcome back to another episode of Blue Grit Radio. This is your host, Eric, and today I'm joined by Officer Britt Kelly. Britt with Seattle Police Department. Many locals will know your name, know your story. But Britt, I just wanted to welcome you to start to the show. Thanks for being here with me.
Thanks for the invite. It is most definitely an honor to be on this side of this today.
No, thanks so much. And it's been really cool to connect with you and talk about the career. You know, when we first actually started talking just about policing and stuff was a couple of years ago, but to have known your story for almost my entire career, right? I was a new cop when you were a new cop, and to hear about your triumph through adversity could be what I would label it as, but certainly one of the hardest experiences anyone can imagine in policing. That is very much a part of your story, as we talked about before recording and off recording. Losing Tim, your FTO, Tim Brenton, your FTO and partner, certainly something that rocked the region, and you to be right there when it happened.
Yeah, no, it was clearly not the most ideal start to a career for sure, but I've grown a lot through it, and it's been absolute, well, I say journey, but it's really been a trek for the last, 16 years of kind of embracing what that was and how it's shaped me for sure. And yeah, we've had, I think my first, if we can be honest and say my first foray into meeting you was when you were in your hiring, when I was very close to jumping ship and being on your side over there.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to say that,
I knew you
but
were.
yeah, but I appreciate you sharing it because I think it speaks to a lot of what we're going to talk about, which is a few things. A few things I want to hit on. One is that you've told your story many times on different podcasts. Front of mind is our friend Abby on being a police officer. As far as a portion of your story, right? That is losing Tim, being in that experience. I'll say, I remember going to Tim's service. I remember how foundational that was towards me in cementing my why, as well as hearing your story from peers and friends I had in Seattle, right? I heard amazing things about you years and years and years before meeting you. I heard amazing things about how Seattle showed up and supported the culture, right, through that hardship. So that is one piece. The other piece, and I appreciate you sharing, right, like almost leaving a department. Like I almost left my department, and I think that that's not to throw shame or blame. That is to recognize like we're part of this bigger community, but also like nothing's perfect, right? And I think that that's just healthy to recognize. I was talking to a younger officer right now, and they were talking about their department. They're like, "Man, I just want to like measure up to this thing," and they almost put their department up on a pedestal. I'm like, that is really cool to be proud and loyal to an organization. And granted, this is not part of recruiting at all. This is my conversation with this officer, but he was kind of bummed about something that happened, and he just felt like he let the department down. I was like, we're all going to have bumps along the road. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do things that aren't even mistakes, but just it's going to be tenuous navigating this relationship to an organization, which is not a living thing. It's an organization. It's a series of systems and policies and stuff, but it's the people that make the difference. And so I kind of wanted to put a nod towards that, but also intro a little bit about where we got this idea initially talking and connecting was to talk about repping Seattle, right? Like I kind of put that out like, hey, who wants to, I got into the podcasting thing in alignment with recruiting, but like, who wants to rep their agency? And you're like, I will. And I love that because you have a history. I mean, we're dinosaurs now with how long we've been in. It's a young industry right now more than ever. But to say, like, yeah, like I'm tired of everyone just, jumping on this bandwagon, whether they're in the agency, out of the agency, in the state, just all this commentary about, SPD. Like, and I appreciate you stepping up in that way because I think I've said it in plenty of posts, but like I feel for the SPD and I feel for the Seattle residents and a lot of the unique challenges, but they're also not unique with big cities. And so thank you for that and kind of stepping up and being willing to kind of share and support like your people and what everyone's trying to do there.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, you even putting that out there for any of us I was all agencies, right, that you put it out there for. And I love what you said when you talk about the department. It's a relationship, right, that we have with our departments. And like any relationship, even, our primary relationships, they ebb and flow, right? Like you all start with that honeymoon phase. And it sounds like whoever you were talking to was still in that honeymoon phase, right, with their department. And you go through thinking that you chose the best one, you're with the best one, and you're just so committed. And then you get that point of like disappointment because you have them on a pedestal and you get that disappointment. And so it's fluid. And I don't think anybody ever really speaks of it that way. So I absolutely see my employment with Seattle PD as that relationship. And I have to be able to kind of meld and flow and change with my department, right? Just like you do in a primary relationship, both entities are changing, and you have to be able to change as well. And sometimes it doesn't work out long term, right? And but I think that if you're willing to be amenable and try to understand from the perspective of the other person, or in this case of our employer, you have a better chance of happiness. And also kind of realizing and not having like an overindulgence of your importance. I mean, we all are important to our departments, and obviously smaller departments, you have a little more weight in the fact that, if you have a department of 10, 15, people, then obviously your loss is going to be felt greater than, a department the size of or Seattle. But at the same time, like you kind of need to have your own boundaries too. And I think that's typical of a regular relationship. You need to, not lose yourself within that dynamic. And so I think that you need to see it that way, no matter who your employer is. And I fully feel that way. So, understand that your employer does appreciate you, but at the same time, like you are a badge number, you are an employee number, and that's just kind of part of that dynamic, and having that reality, not being bitter about it, but that's what they can give to you. And they give you a lot. They give you a lot more than a paycheck, right? But just being realistic about it. So I definitely like that you say that. And I also think that, there's one of the biggest things with Seattle that I think is unique compared to other departments. And I can kind of speak to Kent more, I feel, just because I was all but a signature away from going to Kent PD back in, what was that, 2020, I think it was. Is your command staff has just always been honorable in what I feel, the little guys can really look up to, as officers. Seattle has struggled that way. And I'm not saying anything that hasn't been all over the papers and everything else. And the other thing that, a department like has is you have your city behind you, right? You have your city council and your mayor that are so, so, so supportive. And again, that's where Seattle has struggled. And what I always try to make sure I point out to people is, hey, listen, you can be frustrated with the city of Seattle and those political entities, but man, make sure you're realistic about the separation between the department and the politics of it. Because Seattle PD is just really, they're a great department without our issues. And, that is where I do say, okay, our command staff has really kind of stubbed their toe a lot in the last, I'd say probably a couple years at this point. But overall, I do really push to see the separation of the politics from the department itself, because Seattle is really a great department in that way.
I appreciate how you you empathize, right? Like you're not you're not giving anyone a pass. You're like, yeah, there are missteps, there are better opportunities and ways to do this, which I think is a constructive way to talk about all hands on deck, right? It's from line level to leadership. Everyone has a role in this thing called culture. But at the same time, I think you made a lot of healthy recognitions. One is the relationship to the department is a relationship and you need to feed it, you need to nurture it. But also, what I heard in that is like you need to have fair expectations, right? Just like your partner, your romantic partner, or your best friend, like you need to know boundaries and you need to know what to expect. And at a certain point, you also said, like, maybe it doesn't align anymore. Like, if your missions are not aligned and your values are not aligned and you can't work through it, then that's a thing. And it doesn't have to be this like rug got pulled out from under us unless we set ourselves up for that with expectations, right? Um, and also the separation of the politics or the political aspect, and not like I'm not talking about like drama politics. I'm just talking about like political atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's different. Sheriff Sanders, Thurston County's been on here a couple times, and he resonates with a lot of officers, especially line level, because he's extremely visible and supportive of community need. I'll say tenacious police work, like out on the street, but it's not apples to apples, right? He's in a different community. He's a sheriff. He's elected,
Yeah.
and so I think we have to recognize these things. It doesn't give us a pass to be passive or reclusive with not supporting our people, but they are different landscapes. And I mean, I thought about this. I've had conversations about this in 2020, where some people were like, "Yeah, we need more bosses to step up and say what needs to be said." It's like there is a balance because there were across the nation like certain executive leaders that said what needed to be said, but then they got shown the door. And then how much do you help your people there? And yes, you could make the argument that that is part of the thing, and then people need to see that. But then truly, like, how much can you support your people, and how much can you protect them and give them what they need if you are shown the door? And then you get the next boss that might do exactly none of those things.
Now it is a balance, right? And I think that's part of being a good leader is being able to, I think, being open and honest with that. Like, hey, I have to placate to this side for these reasons. I'm not rolling over and just showing my belly and giving up. But that's again part of being that leader is you kind of have to protect your people, but um, you have to adhere to certain rules essentially. So I think that's where part of that having a realistic expectation, as the officers or the um, low level, and this thought that, oh well, our chief or our lieutenant or our captain, whoever it is, should go out and why don't they say this? Why don't they say that? Well, that's just not realistic, right? Like that just can't happen. And you're absolutely right. Like if you have a good leader, it's that person who can find that balance and do both of those. Yeah, going out, like fine, go say your piece, and yeah, you're gonna be shown the door. And like you said, then where are we at? So then we just took steps back. So I think there's definitely a way to do that and to do that well. And that's really what a true leader is, right?
Yeah. Do you mind me asking, like, what you talked about almost leaving, and that's a huge decision. Some people. I mean, I I jokingly called them like mercenaries during the time of like 20 to 2022 with like even before those dates, right? Like some people make a career of just hopping and picking up a
Yeah.
bonus or kind of resetting their career, and like no, like not judging if like your job takes you different places or you're at a toxic environment and you find a better department, but otherwise, yeah, you're like 10, 15 years in, it's a lot to just leave. And, you had specialty assignments, you've done different things, you have a good reputation. Similarly, I felt very much the same. I think that there's a lot to be learned from those listening because, like a hard relationship, it gets hard at times. Like, what was the thing that maybe was the hardest that was like having you dip your toe in almost leave, but then what was the thing that kept you?
So truth be told, no secret that Seattle had the whole defund movement with all the protest and eruption that came about with
Mm-hmm.
the George Floyd stuff there. So when they came up with the defund, of course, they started touting that, and I thought, well, there's no way. And then when the city council legit passed it, I thought, oh my God, they're talking 50%. And yeah, at that point, 10, 12 years on or something, I forget, I thought, well, I've got to have enough seniority. I've got to be okay. And, sleepless nights, tough times anyway, going through everything that we were going through. And then I just actually sat one night and just pulled up a report to look to see how many sworn do we have and where do I fall on the list. And I was, I think, less than 50 shy of like the halfway point of what we had for sworn officers at that time. And
Wow.
I thought, oh my God, if they really do this, I'm not going to make the cut. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to wait for them to show me the door. I'm going to go figure out where I want to go. Because I did see that, like, okay, I'm not going to be the only one. We're all going to be jumping. And I wanted to be able to have my pick of the agency I wanted to select, not where I felt like, oh, well, here's an opening type of thing. And so that's when I started kind of reaching out. And, it was hard because I did have things that I really knew I liked about my department. And so I wanted to find another department that I thought emulated that. But it was kind of almost like I was being broken up with, and I didn't really want the breakup per
Mm.
se. Like I knew the relationship wasn't great, but I wasn't ready yet to end this relationship.
Mm.
So it was kind of really that feeling of being sad. And I will say that, in full honesty, I had only reached out to Des Moines and King County, I think I had reached out to. And pretty quickly, I realized that King County, is what I refer to as the kissing cousin of Seattle. Like it's the same, it's same, right? So I was like, I'm not going to go and do that because I think they potentially are going to, they're just a little slower to this than we are. I'm not going to go sign up there and then be in the same boat. Des Moines was just way too small of a department than what I wanted. And I loved everything about, and I will tell you when, others in Seattle were a little more quick to jump than I was, and people just started leaving. I don't know if they were leaving without employment or what they were doing, but I mean, you saw it. It was like the floodgates were open and people were just leaving in droves, and it didn't
Mm-hmm.
take long before all of a sudden now that 50% they were looking to fund left on their own because of it. So, okay, now I'm safe. And then I had a hard decision because I had kind of fallen in love with, and then I was like, well, what do I do now though? And so it was kind of like that comfort that you have. And it really was like, yeah, it was like this relationship of like, oh, I got the comfort here and security, but now I got the shiny new thing too with, some hopes and aspirations and things that are shown to me. But ultimately, I decided to stay with Seattle because I do love the size of Seattle. I have always loved saying I'm a Seattle police officer. You
Mm-hmm.
can go anywhere in the country and you say Seattle and people know exactly what you're talking about. You don't have to say, oh, it's a city south of Seattle by, 20 miles or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pride in that. And so I think ultimately, and a huge, huge part that plays into it is my history with Tim being killed and my start there. I feel like my roots are really deep here for that. So ultimately I stayed, but I do always have this little shine to, and whenever I have recruits come through here for PD, I always tell them, you're the great department.
Nice. Well, I think a lot that can resonate with a lot of people that get past, like, as you called it, the honeymoon phase, and then things get hard. Like, life's not, in itself easy, and the career's certainly not in itself easy, but it's got its highs and its lows. And I think with reflection and wellness, and we'll talk about that too. Clearly, that's something you're an advocate for. But like those are the things that help the highs be worth it for the lows. Like we can go through the lows and endure them, and then have it all be meaningful and worthwhile. For me, it was I haven't talked very verbosely, but it was hard times, like coming out of the years you mentioned and getting recruiting to a good place in my department. But there were just things that happened, and this is not pointing fingers, but things that happened involving, let's say, leadership that didn't resonate with me and my values. And at the same time, as much as there's so much positivity, there's so many positive, constructive people at my agency, there were those like pervasive, super negative ones that, I poured it all out, and then to hear these like loud voices in whatever thing and just be worried about all these fantastic people coming in. And I don't even know if I've said this on recruiting, but on recording, I was honestly worried that a significant portion of people that like a lot of us work so hard to recruit could be pushed away, discounted, all for naught, right? Because of what can be a very tenuous culture. And so, there's this opportunity at another agency in the region, and I have ties, like I know people there, and it just kind of it hits close to home in a lot of ways, where I was like, man, is the grass greener? And could this be like a total different kind of reset? And it was so appealing because of the people there, because of the passion, and what I saw was like positivity. But at the same time, like not easy, right? Like to get through the whole process and get the offer, like a conditional offer, and then be like, you know what, despite the challenges, like despite the negative, loud people in or out of the PD at my employment, the people that aren't like are the ones I'm doing it for, right? Like there is so
Mhm.
much need in a agency like either one of ours always. But then there's also all the people that are doing the positive work, are part of like the positive change, or if we have a chance at a most ideal healthy culture, it's those people. And just feeling like I didn't want to not be part of that story, at that point in time. But I do think I learned so much from that dive, and I feel like you did too, right? Just like
Mhm.
to really grapple with that and being so close, like I found it extremely empowering. I mean, I feel like it really re-strengthened and reinvigorated my why, not just for policing, but for policing with my employer.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I feel I did the same, like, because I made the decision to stay, so it was kind of almost like, it got rid of I had to, like, look at myself because at this point now, right? Like, I can't sit there and stomp my feet at Seattle because, like, I could have left, right? And so it's like I had to say to myself and actually, use some emotional intelligence and look on the inside and be a little self-reflective of like, hey, like I chose to stay here. Now it's your job to find your happiness and figure this out, right? And take some ownership there. And, knowing that I could have left. And I agree that I think we look at other, departments, and I looked at, and of course I was so wanting to be lured over there that it looked so perfect. I mean, those fields of green over there were just so lush compared to our burned down, lawns full of weeds, essentially, is it like what Seattle was in my mind. Again, it's just, I don't think any department, I know no department is without its faults and without its issues. And it's about reframing and taking ownership as the employee, right? As the officer, that we need to look at our departments and find where we can be the fertilizer for those fields, right?
Yeah. All right, I'm really excited to share with you the new Blue Grit Police Testing and Hiring Guide that's live on the website. In my guide, I go in everything about the hiring landscape right now, how to develop your mindset, what to expect, and how to show up. And then going into the test itself. So written, physical components, interviews, everything that we're looking for there, the background, what that entails, polygraph, psych eval, medical, what these things all are, and then how you can make sure that you are showing up to be effective, so you're not wasting your time, stress, money, all the angst of waiting for this extremely long-term process to go through. So just show up the right way, your best way the first time. Again, you can find that at bluegritwellness.com. Go to the shop, so it's bluegritwellness.com/shop.
And so again, it was a struggle. I mean, and I don't think any law enforcement officer from, 2020 to, I don't know, 2023, 2024-ish, maybe. I mean, we still have the scars, but they're starting, or the wounds, I should say, and they're starting to heal. I think we'll
Mm-hmm.
always have the scars for those of us that endured all of that to the level that we did. But again, you have to do your part to heal those and make things better. And that's absolutely where I'm at now. And why I'm even at the academy. It's like I decided to be a part of the building phase of my department. And it's kind of, I'm trying to nourish, this thing that I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am a big proponent, with the wellness stuff, like you said, and being a part of the solution. You can't just sit and complain. And, I always joke that if you see two cops car to car, well, they're complaining about something. And it's like, no, like we can be different, and choose to be different. Don't. But the culture does. It's like, it's almost like this rite of passage, right? When you get to sit in roll call and you can find things to complain about and kick your feet about, right? Like, it's like you see the young officers because they just emulate the veteran officers because that's what the veteran officers do. It's funny because I still in my head believe I'm a rookie, but I look around and I'm like, man, I'm not that rookie anymore. And so, okay, great.
No, you're not.
It's now I got to be that one that people are looking up to, and I got to be that change. So, I stand tall and get my shoulders back to take the hits and just go, okay, you know what? I'm going to be a proponent for not just law enforcement, but, especially Seattle.
Yeah. We've mentioned wellness a couple times. Looking through your career, some definitely hard times and also different assignments. But what are some things that really resonate with you as like helping build that personal wellness and resilience that you would offer to people, regardless of the stage of career they're in?
You know, it's interesting because, of course, looking back to hindsight's 2020. I think the first few years I was so focused on disputing almost this because I would hear scuttlebutt amongst the department. She's just going to go to a specialty assignment right away. She's not going
Mm,
to do her time. She's, I just kind of heard things. And so I think I just was so hell bent on dispelling that I tried to push everything that happened away. I shoved it in a closet, and just closed the door on that and thought, I need to focus on this. I just need to prove to everybody that I actually do want to do this job. I want to be a cop. I want to be a beat cop. And so I worked, nights in downtown Belltown for years, and
mm-hmm.
even went to bikes. I was a night bicycle officer for years, went to day bikes. And so, that was, I definitely was trying to prove myself. And not that I didn't love it. I loved it. Bikes was by far my most fun time on this job as far as the things I got to do. Um, I went then into our force investigation team as a detective investigating officer involved shootings,
Mm-hmm.
and definitely not a job that many wanted to do. Right?
No.
Very tedious. Obviously, people think of it as you're part of IA. No, I'm not part of IA. Like I don't make any determinations. I'm actually here just to do the investigation. And it's super tedious. Definitely not a job for anyone. But that was kind of the start of me being able to all of a sudden these officers are coming in that were just in a horrific incident, right? Where they felt
Mm-hmm.
they had used deadly force. And it started to bring things back, right? From my day with Tim. And it took, I ended up, I say being stuck in that unit because when I was looking to transition is when the George Floyd stuff started and everything was a big hiatus and people were leaving. And so, we don't, we lost, I think, what, like 400 or 500 officers in, short amount of time. So needless to say, I wasn't leaving the unit. I wasn't going to get to go anywhere. But it was definitely during that time of being able to see officers in my level of empathy in my ability, and I started to kind of just all of a sudden life started to change, and I started to that door that I had slammed shut with all that trauma with Tim, it started to open on its own,
Mm,
not under my control. And truth be told, the seams kind of came bursting off of that door, not at a time that I wanted it to. And that's kind of a whole another story, but that was the beginning of my realization of wellness and the need to really focus on that in this career.
yeah. Yeah, I appreciate just that mindset is kind of a prevailing thing. I'm recognizing in this conversation, right? So much of it is a choice, and that's what I think is true about wellness, even, or like how do we live the lives we want. It all starts with mindset and making a decision, and then it's also narratives. Like, what narratives are we influenced by, and do we want to dispute or dispel? I love that. You were hearing the murmurings of like, oh, she's gonna go off the street, or they're gonna move her off the street. You're like, f that. Like, I signed up to do this thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and like Belltown back then, that was like, I want to say hoppin' or poppin'. I think both are
it was the
true.
place.
Yeah, we hung out there a bit after college, and then it would, yeah, it was not necessarily the best place to keep hanging out if safety, and avoidance of those types of situations was a priority for you. Um, yeah, and then bikes. I mean, like, I loved how, like, I think coming into being a new officer, not knowing much about police culture, like bike officers was always kind of like the jokey, like, you're wearing shorts and it's just like, it's not a legit thing. But then you see like how some departments were doing it back then, and Seattle, absolutely a thing. And then my department too, like that, you're basically these like quick ninjas that are like silence, and you're like swooping in and grabbing people up and like doing all this incognito, like very very tactical, very proficient, very like action proactive oriented. So like very much the real deal that would get into a lot of things and pick up a lot of arrests, um, because of the nature of what you can do on bikes,
You
which
know,
is pretty crazy and awesome.
yeah, no, bad guys were used to listening to the Crown Vic engine.
Hmm.
They weren't used to listening to hearing
Yeah.
tires roll up on a bike that's all quiet, right?
Yeah, I remember one time, I think I must have been FTO, right? Because I was told like, "Hey, turn down here. We got to pick up somebody from the officers in the park," right? So it was like the pylon was moved, and it's just driving down this paved thing and in a Crown Vic, and then just sitting in like the pitch black. And then I'm like, "Am I in the right spot?" And my FTO's like just kind of probably smirking but looking away from me. And then I just like I have my window down because that's safe and all that. But like I hear this like click 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 click, click, and I'm like, "Oh, like they just rolled up and they're like, "Oh yeah, we have the guy detained over there." And just hop out and we'll walk him back to the car. I'm like, "Geez, you guys came out of freaking nowhere."
That's what the
Yeah, the
bad guys
power of
usually
that.
said too.
Stealthy. Yeah, no, thanks for running through the different assignments you've taken on, because that was something I wanted to ask you. And I'm glad we've kind of come to what you're doing now, right? So academy, there's a significant portion of people that are younger in listenership, and whether they have yet to go through academy, or they're going through, or they're at FTO, or even they're a 2-year officer. I think there's a lot of these themes or kind of tips that would be relevant to anyone. Um, but what are some things that come to mind as far as like what you would encourage, either conceptually or themes or things to recognize and tips for those that are coming into the profession, like specifically adapting to this culture of this, something that's completely different than what most people have ever experienced before?
I think one of the biggest things is um, for the recruits coming in, or you know, academy is not what it was when, and it doesn't matter what agency, whoever it is, whether it's your recruiter, whether it's like you're such a small department that it's, even your chief or your sheriff or whatever, they're going to tell you, oh, the academy is not what it used to be when I was there. The world is not what it used to
Hmm.
be.
Yeah.
So, yes, policing, the academy, the training, it's all evolved. It's not the same, but that doesn't mean it's bad. So, don't make that translation in your head that when they tell you, "Oh, it's not what it used to be." Just get through your 19 and a half weeks, and then when you come back here, we'll show you what to do.
Hmm.
That is not going to be the growth mindset and the
Yeah.
mindset we need from the
I hate
people that
that.
come in here,
Yeah.
right? You need to understand that this is called the Basic Law Enforcement Academy. Basic. You're right. We are not going to train you advanced tactics because you don't have the foundation. We literally lay a foundation of so much. I mean, the profession of law enforcement, just to go out there and be a beat cop. I mean, my gosh, all the stuff that you have to learn, right? There's so much. And in 19 and a half weeks, that's not that much time. So, you know, be the biggest sponge that you can be, and just come in with the attitude of, you got to be here, so you might as well get everything you can out of this. If
Mhm.
you're resistive at all, or think you already know it, or think you're just going to get through this so that you can get onto your department, um, that's not going to help you at all.
Yeah.
Let us help you build the foundation. And then, yeah, when we get you back to your agencies, they're going to start building the house. They're going to start really putting your layers and levels on. So, the biggest thing I think is to, and I don't think agencies do it with knowing like they're putting a negative spin on it for these recruits that are coming in. It's just, we all say it. I mean, I'm sure you've said it. I used to say, oh, the academy's not what it used to be when I was there.
Yeah.
Well, yes. And so please don't translate that as bad. Just realize we have evolved with the changes in the world and how we do policing. And this job is still the best darn job ever.
I
So
think
that's I
yeah.
think the biggest thing I really do encourage for recruits.
Yeah, there's a couple parts I want to go back to and underline, which is I think you're right in that some don't realize they do it, and I think that also there's some that do realize they do it. Or maybe the better version is like we should realize that there's a potential and we should try to mitigate it because of the cost and the removal of the benefit, right? So yes, it is not the same, and nor is it practical to be the same. But just as I've said those types of things at different points in my career, I've also heard it when I was new, right? And like a lot of us, like I mean, at this point, like shoot, I'm hitting 18 years. Are you 17 right there?
16.
16, yeah. So, um, I think that most people of our tenure would agree that that was the good old days. But then you're right, like the people that came before us would be like, we were soft, right? Because maybe people weren't, passing out and getting carted away in the ambulance. But I think at the time when we came through, it was pretty regular that somebody would fail that, the test coming in and be carted away in an ambulance, which is like, I'll inject that step. The physical is a basic, like, make sure you can master that. Don't be on a bad day, on a sick day, be able to pass that thing. Like, you owe it to yourself and your family to have that level of fitness. Um, all to say that, yeah, it's not helpful when you invite and you encourage the recruits to be like, hey, you're going to learn a bunch of messed up stuff. We're going to help you remember it. Just get through it and pass your tests. What good is that to anyone? Like, I love how you highlight, guys, this is basic. Also, the times are more complicated than ever. And I think that to the point of what you said earlier, like, we got to adapt, like, through the relationship with the agency, we got to adapt to the relationship with policing in the world. Like, that's responsible. But those are some of the people that had the hardest time in these reform times, like 2020. They were the most inflexible, either with their personal resilience, like, and I'm not trying to throw shade, it just is, right? If you can adapt and overcome, that is the definition of like kind of resilience and a growth mindset, which you point out too. But some people that just they dug their heels in and they're snapping at the kneecaps because they just couldn't pivot. Whereas like we had people that were in academy learning one thing and then the laws were changing and they had to like course correct and learn something else, and by the time they came into field training they were learning something else. Now that's challenging, and as is it challenging that you knew something to be true for 10, 15 years, what's articulatably reasonable, legal, justified, and now it's not. You're like, ooh, hold on, like I gotta make some adjustments in how I'm processing this, right? I have reasonable suspicions for someone and they take off running. I can't tackle the person. I can't tase them. Okay, pump the brakes, right? That's a lot too. But all to say, like, there's an opportunity for growth. Even when you're giving your example, it makes me think about like if like your parents were like, "Hey, you're gonna go to middle school. It's all garbage because when you get to high school, that's where it really rubber meets the road." But it's all found it builds upon itself. We have to recognize that, yeah, there's value in each teacher that similarly, different field trainers or, PTO instructors, whatever. Like no one knows it all and you're going to keep learning. And that's actually the road to success is like recognizing you're never going to learn it all. And the moment you think you're close to mastery, if you're doing it right, I think you're going to feel like a total novice, like a total noob, right?
You should never. I always tell recruits, the day that you realize that you have this job mastered, like when you really are like, yeah, I got this, like my learning curve is you need to quit because
Mm.
there's something wrong in here because you will never, because even when you, like you just said it, even when you get something down, LEDs come out and the laws change or something, there's always something to change, right?
Mm.
And so it's you have to, and you might as well do that here. You have to start to understand there's always going to be a pretty steep learning curve. But I also think that that's what makes this job great, right? Like, is it's a, let's be real, it's a type of person that likes to get into law enforcement. It's usually those of us that, get bored with monotony. Well, guess what? You are not going to have monotony here.
Hmm.
So stop looking for monotony. You
Right.
don't want it, you know? So I absolutely agree. You always need to be learning in this job, and you should really have a little bit of fear inside if you think to yourself, I got this. And you're like, wait a minute, maybe I need to take a step back and see if I've just become complacent.
Yeah. No, that's so healthy. And I would say, yeah, at a point, I thought I had a strong grasp of recruiting and everything about it. But I will specify, like, I thought I feel like I'd figured out recruiting for my agency in our region for the time being, right? And I also recognize that my ideas in a year and a half to 2 years, like they were stale now, right? So one of my personal opinions, especially with our times of like how young our profession is that I would love to get rid of these like kind of traditional 5-year rotations for a lot of things. Like detective specialized investigations is different. You build mastery over a lot of time and reps,
Sure.
but things like community engagement, things like recruiting, I think should be 2 years because I think that you want to hit the ground running. Like, I want someone that's fresh and engaged. School resource, maybe that's the same, right? Like bikes, proactive stuff. Like, yeah, you can. I'm not saying like just churn back out, but like you could parlay that into something else or go to a different unit and take those skills and keep building. Because we are young, we have young supervisors, young detectives, young everything. Like, why not? Why not enhance that development rate for departments with a lot of rotations or specialty opportunities? But that's a little tangent. But all to say that I realized as soon as stepping out of something like recruiting, I was like, man, things keep shifting. Like what's gonna what worked last year is not gonna work now, right? Because you already did it, and you got to stay fresh.
Oh, that is the world we live in now, right? It's social media and everything. I mean, things just are moving so fast now. And, I think that there's really no place in this job that I think you can stay stagnant. And like you said, I agree that you have mastery of certain things. For us, obviously, CSI, arson bombs, things that, are much more
Mm-hmm.
technical
Mm-hmm.
that you need some higher level training for. But I agree with, pushing yourself and just kind of broadening your skill base, if nothing else. But yeah, as quick as things come out, things become old. And that's kind of the mentality that we have with people too, right? Like everybody's so used to like here, now, new, fresh, different. So yeah, I can see recruiting would definitely be a challenge to keep
Yeah.
up with keeping it fresh.
Yeah.
And I do want to say one thing for people coming into the copping world and profession at this juncture, and I tell this to as many recruits as I can. I always meet with the Seattle recruits when they come on campus, and the first thing I always tell them is that I have a great level of admiration and respect for them for
Mm-hmm.
being in this profession at this time. You know as well as I do, when we came through, police was very regaled, right? Like, I mean, there was a few positions, it was very competitive to try to get in departments, especially when I came in, everybody was in a hiring freeze because it was
Yeah, it
kind
was
of a
harder for you.
downturn of and so it was hard to get in. But it was just a different time for people now to look and go, you know what? I want to be a cop. I want to get into this profession. After everything we just went through, that takes a lot of courage.
Yes.
That takes
Yeah.
a lot of courage. And then I tell my Seattle people, I say, thank you for choosing Seattle. I mean, it's again, it's no secrets. I'm saying out loud, we have been the pinnacle of just getting, the shit kicked out of us, as far as, whether it's through the, what the media has projected, through some, riffs with our command staff, just through everything with the George Floyd stuff. I mean, it's been some rough times. And it would be pretty easy, I think, for someone who goes, you know what, I want to be a cop, but you know what, I'm going to head off to, Kent, Auburn, Renton, King County, whatever, right? So I really, really respect these recruits that come in and go, you know what, I want to be a cop. I want to be a cop in 2025. I want to be a cop for Seattle. Like, I think that takes a lot of gusto right there. And I think it's very admirable. And I think sometimes, as these veterans, instead of being like, oh, you're an idiot, why would you want to come work for this department, or why would you want to go work for that department, that we need to, change that mindset and say, wow, uh, you really possess something deep inside. Like, you must really want to do that. What do you see? Like, good on you, because there will be a day that Seattle's back up to full speed, and it's just going to be the amazing department that it once was. I believe that in the deepest crevices of my heart.
Yeah. And if enough people do, then it will. And if not enough people do, then it won't. Like within the agency, right? It starts there in that belief. As cheesy as it may sound, that's what it is. I similarly appreciate those that have come in these harder times. And for sure, things are getting better, but especially like in the years we're talking about, like if you're signing up, then those people, if you took the time to talk to them for active cops, like if you're involved with recruiting or just, took one on a ride along or just met one in the hallways, like if that didn't help you, if you didn't take that opportunity to hear their why and strengthen your own or revisit your own, then like that was a missed opportunity. The good news is if you haven't, then it's still there, right? Like
Yep.
there's still these new people coming in or these new people getting their footing, which is super exciting to see. But all to say that like it's an extreme purpose in a self-determination if you're coming in during those hardest times that are not when you or I came in. But certainly we all came here for a reason. And you talked about kind of this, I forget exactly the word you used. Was it self-importance or like for me, it was like ego. And I think a lot of us would really get uncomfortable when we think that we're egotistical. And I don't think most of us are egotistical. We certainly know those types in our industry. I don't think many of my closest circles, professionally or personally, would call me an egotistical person. But I do realize a lot of times when I inflated my importance or I inflated my potential impact or I took on too much, and that's not a brag. That's not a humble brag. That's actually a point of like huge, I suppose, like self development and improvement I
Yep.
needed because like I am one person, and for me to think that I could shift all these things and influence all this, like it's not healthy. I still got to be me, and I still got to navigate my family and show up for them. Arguably more importantly than like my job. So all to say, I think that these things all intersect, and there's so much that you covered that I think really helps the listener again, regardless of where they're at, whether they're retired or whether they're a rookie, like kind of conceptualize these things and hopefully reflect on it themselves.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I encourage, if you're still in the job and a veteran, be curious, right? Be curious of why these new people are coming in. Be open minded, ask the questions. Like you said, you missed opportunity if you didn't talk to them and find out. And I think that's the benefit, obviously when you were in your recruiting unit, that you had the benefit of talking to these people on the front end, right? And now
Yeah.
I obviously do. So I get to hear their stories and figure out and be like, wow, that's impressive, And so even if you're retired from this, still be curious. If you come across these people, don't be a naysayer, don't this and that's the thing. How you talk to very few retired cops that sit there, they talk about this great career that they had and everything else, but then they're gonna like essentially kick at the bucket that just brought them water from the well. Like,
Hmm.
no, like realize that times are different and this is still going to be, and has the potential to being the greatest career. So absolutely, be curious, and for those of you on the front end, just kind of be proud of where you're at, be a sponge, absorb all of this. And I still just will always say, I think this is a great career. Obviously not for everybody, but if this is for you, I mean, my goodness, what a fun, a fun career to be in. And I always say, you don't go to a party and nobody walks up to the, CPA for, Microsoft or Amazon. Oh, tell me some work stories. But someone you say, or a cop, oh man, everybody's swarming. Oh, tell me a story,
Mm-hmm.
So there's a reason for that. It's a
Yeah.
great, great career.
Yeah, and what you said made me think of this thing, and I always kind of pause because I don't know how people receive it, but I think if you listen to the show, like you get it. But there's a place for venting, and then once we get to whining, and then the B word, ing, then it's like, okay, like that's synonymous with the victim mentality, right? Do you want to be a victim, or do you want to have some choice and some agency over this decision? Because yes, there are a lot of opportunities in this job, and even if you're like, well, I don't have the specialties, or the bosses don't love me because I don't kiss butt or whatever, and I'm not going to get that specialty gig to kind of reorient. And okay, but literally how you do patrol, like you choose what kind of patrol cop you show up as. You can do the bare minimum. You can be like just the facts ma'am, or you can show up and like really make someone be seen. You can chase down some leads on like something that most of your peers might be like, holy cow, you actually work that? Okay, you actually have a case here? Like that's amazing, right? Because we're not the victims. The victims had something done to them. But we come to work, it's a choice. Like no one's making you be here. And that's super unhealthy. If pension is your prison, then like you got some reflecting to do. But also, like I do see, although I took recruiting and I did put in for it, and I thought I was the person for it, but I was a little terrified, to be honest. Like I had a specialty sergeant gig, and it's a small unit I really wanted to work toward, and I had it in hand, bird in hand. But then I took the risk because I thought it was what was necessary, and I'm glad I did. But in that, you recognize the gift, and the gift was interacting with all these people that, despite our narratives, many of which I believed, like no one wants to be a cop. Why would anyone want to be a cop right now? No, there are people out there, and I got to meet them and bring a lot of the good ones here and help a lot of the great ones elsewhere get hired other places. I mean, I was in close connection with a guy that works at your department, right? So like it's happening, it continues to happen. And for those that are so dejected, and probably not listeners here, but you work with them, so nudge them this way. But like perhaps like figure out a time when your training officer or is visiting the academy and ask if you can tag along, right, to talk to
Yep.
your recruit. Go to the lunchroom and see that it's like, look, it's like high school, right? They're all in their little cliques and
Yes.
their little squads, and they're all, some are bantering, some are super like militant, and the other like because they see a uniform. And other ones, they're kind of jabbing at each other because it's their safe time. There's like their free time during lunch. It's funny and it's nostalgic and it's exciting. And then also opportunity, like you can go to graduation, they're publicly posted. So whether it's your department, if you actually want to take on the challenge to reinvigorate yourself, like go to a graduation, remember what it was like, how much time and effort you put in for that thing. Not just academy, but the hiring process, all the stumbles, all the awkward oral boards. Like do the work, and that's part of doing the work. But man, if you don't get some sort of fire lit in you or some sort of inspiration from seeing those bright faces, those like determined eyes up on stage, like then maybe it's time to find something else, and that's okay too. That's absolutely
Yep.
okay.
No, it's just absolutely. We all have our expiration date of, when too much is too much and it's not healthy. And I love what you say because I use that term too, that I say you're not a victim to this. When you find yourself complaining and being, acting as if you are a victim, this is actually an honor. It's an honor to do this job, right? And you have the opportunity to influence people, good and bad, right? And so that's a big responsibility and a privilege, and that's how it absolutely needs to be seen and treated. And that was my transition. I went to our training unit for our FTO side for SPD because I knew I had actually finally realized that I was as much a part of the problem because I was so unhappy and everything was so negative. And I just wondered, like, what was I doing at this point? And I thought, you know what? I chose to stay with this department. I chose to stay in this profession. Where can I find the happiness? The happiness is going to be with the recruits. The happiness is going to be with the student officers. And so that's originally where I went. And I So I was there and, like, started to kind of feel re-energized from them, the
Hmm.
student officers, and then kind of backtracked and ended up falling into an opportunity here. 1000%. It's okay to leave this profession, as you said, but man, do the work. Like, ask yourself, why am I spewing this negativity? Don't be a victim to it. There's so much positivity that you can still find in this, and it's your job to find it on your own department because it is there. And if it is, yeah, if you are a beat officer, man, you get to deal with the public and stuff, and that's, let that be fun. Let that, those engagements and what you get to do. Again, everything's a choice here, right?
Yeah. Even what you said about this honorable job, right? This honorable profession. It's like, okay, like that's a choice because if we believe it, if we want to believe it, we want to see it, like you got to be it. So like I know there's plenty of calls, plenty of phases in my career where I was dragging my feet and everything was a chore. This call, oh my God, so annoying. This type of
Yeah.
reporting party is so annoying. But like am I demonstrating an honorable profession? Like, no, in those times I was not. When I was mouthing off or seeing what I could get away with, chipping at the guy to see what he would say, is that honorable? No, it wasn't. And I'm not proud of it, but it's human and we do those things. And I'll probably certainly have more cynical moments before I'm done. But it all is to say, like, if you want it to be great again, if you want it to be honorable, then like we got to show up and contribute towards that. And that is internally in our department. Like we eat our own. How do we show up for each other? And a byproduct, like, ultimately, why are we doing this job? It's like for the people out there that need us.
Yep, absolutely. And the people within our organizations too, I think, right? Like,
Hmm.
that camaraderie and connection. We work with some of the coolest people. Our squads, we really become family, right? And so I think we're really lucky to work with some really cool people too. So,
Absolutely.
be a building block to the change. And it's funny, it's infectious, right? Like, that negativity is infectious. The positivity is also infectious.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and I don't care how many years you have on, you can have a hot minute on, you can still be that, breath of fresh air in a way that's, subconscious to everybody around you, just find ways to lighten change convo if everyone's sitting around coffee complaining, right?
Hmm.
Make it your own little, like, social study that you can sit and, and see how many people you can
That is
change and get kind of.
that is a fact. Yeah, there's a fact. Like some people walk in the room, the briefing room, or like the substation. And you're like, okay, someone just sucked all the life out of here. But conversely, and there's a specific person that I was involved in the hiring. Like and she was just so. Anyone that works in a department probably already knows who this is. But like so upbeat and like chipper, like almost to put that word to it, but just so positive all the time, excited. Everything's awesome. Like everything is awesome, like the Lego movie. But then I was a little bit like just like anyone that's that positive. I'm like, oh man, I really hope like we don't mess it up. Like meaning like the city and the work and the culture and just like what policing can do. But like 2 years in, like as positive as ever, like everything's like an opportunity, such a workhorse, such a such a positive, not just positive to be positive, but like such a great reputation amongst even the cynics, right? That type of personality. So I'm like, man, it's possible. So I do get inspired by this officer and officers like her because one of my sergeants is like similarly like everything's just like everything's peachy, right? Big grin. He's like, I'm having fun. This is awesome. I'm like, man, like that I need that. Like I need to see that, and it is good to be a part of that. But it's such
100%.
a reminder.
Yeah. See, and it's infectious, right? You can't.
It is. It
Yeah.
makes my day way better when I get to see that, like, and it's genuine. He's talking about this pursuit and the guys and the crew is so positive. That's not an accident, right?
No, it's
That a
not. It's
grave
not.
cruise is all like everyone's smiling, everyone's joking. They're not like clamming up just because I walked in the room. Like they're calm, they're relaxed. I'm like, that is leadership, right? That is culture.
Yeah. And leadership is not, it's not stars and bars and all of
Mm-mm.
that. Leadership is how you present yourself and what you do, right?
100%. Yes. Well, Britt, we've covered a lot of ground. I really appreciate your time and sharing personal things and agency things and just everything. And in a very constructive manner, right? A blend of real talk, which is like a thing that I try to toggle. So like, we have some real things to talk about and then also offer solutions, not just like fluff. Is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with? And also, I don't recall if there's any, like if you're on LinkedIn or where people can reach out, or if you're kind of off the grid, it's like, no, you gotta just,
There's no off the grid. There hasn't been off the grid for many, many years for me, I
no,
feel like.
yeah.
No, I'm definitely on LinkedIn. I'm just under Britt Kelly, obviously Seattle PD email and CJTC. For anybody that's coming down here as a recruit, gosh, please, say hi, seek me out. I will obviously around when we have a class, we're kind of more focused around our specific class, but I will always sit and spend time with anybody who wants to talk about, what I call the raw side of this job, surviving trauma, dealing with trauma, just the truth of like, my goodness, what does this job entail? So anyone who is looking to be hired, come seek me out. I am just so about supporting this profession. Of course, Seattle PD, if someone wants to talk about Seattle specifically, please, 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 you can talk offline and tell you, the raw truth. I'm not here to put rose-colored glasses on you or anything. And I'm going to be straight up honest. So if anybody wants to seek me out, LinkedIn, Britt Kelly on there under, Seattle PD. You can reach out to me there. I'm pretty good about checking in on that. Probably the easiest way to reach me. But if you come down here as a recruit, you better say hi.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thanks so much, Britt.
Thank you so much. This was definitely an honor for sure.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.